If you're like me, you've got plenty of inputs in your life, plenty of information coming in from external sources. But how often do you have time to sit and listen within to the voice and the wisdom and the guidance that is not coming from someone external or something external, but from your inner guidance system? There's a great book I read many years ago called Let Your Life Speak. So, this episode is really an invitation to let your life speak, to listen to the wisdom and the message of what's going on within. So, hopefully, I can give you some perspective and some things to think about with this rather than adding to the external voices, but really just encouraging you to check in with your internal voices and the internal guidance. So this is like the Shravana energy. Shravana is the nakshatra about hearing and listening. As I'm recording this, we have the full moon in Shravana. And if you want a guide for your rising and moon signs of what that means for you personally, you can join the email list where I send out these weekly horoscopes. So it's quietmindastrology.com. If you're on the list, you've already got this in your inbox. And it's a way to work with this for your rising and moon sign and an exercise you can do to work with this. And if you want to go deeper in your own astrology studies, quietmindastrology.com/workshop is where I'll be hosting the Become Your Own Astrologer workshop. You can check out all the details, link in the show notes for that. So, what has your life been trying to tell you? Well, first we have to think about, well, how does life speak to us? And what I've observed is it speaks to us in primarily feelings. So, how you feel when you are with somebody tells you a lot about that relationship. Do you feel happy? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel excited to see that person? Do you feel like you need space from that person? There's a lot of communication in your feelings moment to moment. And we'll talk more about that, but feelings have a lot of information. There's also synchronicities speaking to us. So, like for example, for me recently, I watched a movie and Albert Einstein was sitting in a park. And then I went on this trip and got to this park, and there's a statue of Albert Einstein in the park. And then I listened to a podcast and they're talking about Albert Einstein. These things are all so completely unrelated. There's no way they could have been like somehow, of course, I was going to hear those things and see those things. They're all very personal to me. What it means, I don't know. I'm processing and digesting that myself. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but you may have experienced this as well, where you see, hear, or experience something in one place and another and another, and they're all completely unrelated. I think life is speaking in those moments. And what exactly it means is very personal to you. But that's just another example of how life is speaking to you. Are you noticing those things? There's patterns as well. And again, patterns will repeat until we do something about them. Oftentimes they're unconscious, and people end up in situations like, how did I end up in this kind of job again or this kind of relationship again? There's positive patterns, there's negative patterns, but a lot of times they're unconscious until something needs to change. Maybe we want to grow a business and increase our income. So we start to look at the patterns that are creating the current results. We want to overcome eating pattern that we don't like. We're having digestive issues. Now we need to look at our eating patterns and start to assess them because the body is speaking to us and saying something's not working. Maybe there's things we're doing and we feel amazing and we feel super inspired and we're seeing growth and we're seeing improvement in our lives and in growth in our business, growth in our relationship, growth in our finances and our health. So we want to then look at what patterns are creating that growth. And again, life is always speaking to us and we just need to observe it. Life can also speak to us in louder messages like triggers, like disproportionate reactions to things. Like somebody, like your spouse asks you to take out the garbage and you're suddenly frozen. And it doesn't seem like a proportionate reaction to that situation. Or somebody invites you to speak at an event and you're suddenly super nervous and afraid, and it's bringing up stuff from the past and fears and anxieties and triggers. So triggers are things that are, you could say like samskaras in the Vedic tradition. We talk about these patterns that Now we become aware of them. Now we have choice of what to do with them. It's all about listening within. And in that moment when you're triggered, it's like the listening, the ears close and like we can't perceive, like the perception is not clear. So we're not able to really see what's going on in that moment. So we need a little space from it to process it. We'll talk about this later, like what kind of things we need to create space to listen to our lives. And then the last one I'll touch on today that I think life is how life is speaking to us is through our dreams. And there's so much coming up and processing our experience and our unconscious thoughts and subconscious thoughts coming up in the dreams. And it's like when we go to a movie theater. I think this is part of why movies are so popular and so many people in the movie industry make so much money because it's so much part of our innate human experience to hear stories and to tell stories and learn from stories and be inspired by storytellers. And I think traditionally we would sit around the fire and we would share stories in the end of the day and then go to rest and then dream and process the day. And as for whatever reason, as humans, like we developed to remember things through stories, and it became a very useful strategy to teach information and to pass things down. So we go to sleep, we process the day through stories and symbols and imagery like we would see in a movie. But it's our own personal movie that the symbols are our own personal symbols. And an airplane to me means something different to you. And when I dream about a elephant and you dream about an elephant, it means something different to each of us. And it can mean something different to me every time I dream about it. So dreams are very symbolic. And one of my teachers about dreams would say that a dream not analyzed is like receiving a letter and not opening it. And this is like a letter from the universe. It's like, here's some really important information and interesting stuff. And if you don't open it, it's like there's a lot of stuff you're missing out on. So I think when you analyze the dreams and just observe and look at what's going on there, I think there's a lot of life speaking to you in the dreams. And again, these are not external things. These are not shows. These are not podcasts or movies or books. These are your life speaking to you through your feelings, the synchronicities you're observing, the patterns that you're recognizing, the triggers that are coming up for you, and the dreams that you're having. Now, there may be others I'm not thinking of, but these are some of the big ones I've observed and that I check in with a lot. And when I see how I feel in a situation, I have a lot of feedback to work with. And some of those things you might notice in these feelings, synchronicities, patterns, triggers in your dreams is you might feel a sense of expansion with certain things and a sense of contraction with other things. And I think a lot of the universe and life moves in this cycles of expansion and contraction. And we have the inhale of the lungs, the exhale of the lungs. We have the heartbeat like a pulse. We have day and night, the sun and moon, the yin and yang, waking and sleeping, and cycles throughout the day of highs and lows, energy going up, energy going down. We have times in life where it seems like everything is just going great, it's expanding and growing. And there's times where everything feels like it's very difficult and challenging. We have times of contraction. This could be during a Saturn return or Sati or Saturn Dasha. These times typically bring more limitations and contractions. But life is always moving in expansion and contraction. Like we can't be alive if we just contract. Like we just exhale, you're not going to be alive very long. So if you just inhale, you're also not going to be alive very long. And sometimes we kind of crave the expansion, the good, the pleasure. And so much of the yogic wisdom and the Eastern wisdom is like, if you're just moving towards pleasure and what you want and desire and just avoiding pain, you're going to create suffering. You're going to create attachments. And this is where addictions start to form and all sorts of behaviors, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain. And as we observe those things on the smaller level, and we catch them when they're small, then we can do something about it. It's easier to do something about it when these things are smaller. And we start to see some behaviors of like, I'm eating this food, a snack every day now. It was just like once in a while, now it's every day. And then my body's not feeling so good, the stomach's not feeling so good. So I'm getting some feedback and noticing the pattern, noticing the feelings, and I now have choice in what to do with it. And really, a lot of times in life, like there's times where we feel like we don't have choice. And astrology gives us the perspective of, okay, I can see like I'm going through the Saturn Dasha And that's a time where there's typically more contraction and restriction, but I can choose to bring out the positive side of the Saturn energies or the intentional side of it without the sense of moving towards pleasure, avoiding pain, but the sense of harnessing the energy that's here and directing it intentionally. So it doesn't necessarily mean pleasure or pain to have discipline. It can actually feel very unpleasurable and painful to have discipline. It can feel very pleasurable to have discipline. But it's really a neutral thing. Say, okay, I see what's actually going to be best for my body and my health and my relationships and my career and purpose. So I'm going to choose those things. And Saturn is like the humbling teacher of these things. Jupiter is the benevolent teacher that brings more optimism and hopefulness and growth. Now, this can be pointing us towards more possibility, more trying new things, more exploring new opportunities. You're in the Jupiter Dasha, Jupiter return, Jupiter's over your Kendra houses, 1, 4, 7, or 10. These are expansive times. Or you have Jupiter just well placed in your chart, like in the first, fifth, or ninth houses, or transit over the first, fifth, or ninth. These are very positive times for Jupiter. And this brings more expansion. And again, it could be positive or negative. Like if you've got expansion and too many opportunities, now you're overwhelmed and your life is just throwing stuff at you and you can't keep up with it. So expansion is not always a good thing, and contraction is not always a bad thing. But these are things to observe. And then you might notice the sort of bright lights I talk about sometimes like this. Like I was in depression many years ago, and I think of this like bright lights of like, oh, when I started doing meditation, I felt a lot better. It's like getting out of the depression. When I started doing yoga, I felt even more improvement. And when I started to be disciplined in it and have daily practice, I felt even more improvement, especially as I learned I was in my Saturn Dasha. So discipline for me was especially important. For anyone in a Saturn Dasha or Saturn transit, which is very common, it's happening a lot. So that's an example. Or if you're in like the Mars Dasha, it's a time to be more active. And is if you stay more active, you do more exercise, more activities in general, you're probably going to feel more flow, more synchronicity, more feedback from life. And life is going to be guiding you towards more fulfillment of your purpose. And I think you might start to notice along the way the opposite of bright lights might be resistance, where you're like just resisting. Like it could be an opportunity, like a new job, but it means like it's going to change your life dramatically, and it's awesome in many ways. But it's also like you're not just like a full yes, just going for it. There's resistance coming up. So life is telling you there's something to pay attention to there. And if you feel that resistance in your life anywhere right now, which there's probably somewhere, and if there's not, it's maybe worth examining a little more those 5 things I talked about at the beginning, where the resistance might be coming up in relationships, purpose, health, wealth, the 4 main areas of life I talk about a lot. And it's just an opportunity to learn and grow and learn from it. So not necessarily good or bad to have resistance. You might be given a big raise of income and now you're resistant to it and you're frozen, and like maybe you want to just spend it all right away and then you're back to your income. This happens a lot with lottery winners. They might get $5 million and then you check in with them 3 years later and they're back where they were before the lottery ticket, because they have a sort of set point and a sort of way of being and so many rooted patterns that it was too much abundance too fast, and they had a lot of resistance to being in that frequency of like holding it. That's a different frequency. So you might notice in your life that there's different frequencies you're stepping into now, and there might be some resistance to holding those frequencies. I've experienced this many times. And as you sort of level up or expand or grow or basically stop repeating an old pattern, now there's some room for a new pattern to come in or to just eventually drop back to the old pattern. So what is life telling you? What are you noticing? What are you seeing in your patterns? And you might notice one of these needs arise. So as you're noticing your feelings, the synchronicities, the patterns, the triggers, the dreams in your life, you're noticing where you feel expansion, where you feel contraction, where there's bright lights, where there's resistance. To process all of that, we need space, we need time, we need patience, we need compassion for ourselves. We need support from other people, real humans also going through their own journeys. We need connection with people who can relate to us. And these things, I think, are even more important now than ever in modern times as we get more and more digital, more and more isolated, more and more online, which has many, many amazing benefits, but also increases the need equally for social connection and integration of life, where we can have access to all the information in the entire world of all time at once at any moment. That's overwhelming. That's more than any human could possibly handle. So we need space to integrate the life we're living. We need time to integrate the choices we're making. We need patience with ourselves to process this because this human body is not evolved for all this yet. This has all happened so fast in our lifetimes to have all this technology and information everywhere. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by it and to have it overload you. So it's important to have time and space to be with yourself and what you need and your processing of everything. And when you do that, you can reach out to support and have connection and talk to people going through their own journeys. And I think, again, we learn so much through stories and through reflection and integration and having people to share our journeys with. So I think these are the deeper lessons of Shravana, the nakshatra in Capricorn, and where the full moon is right now as I'm recording this. So I hope this gave you some perspective to process in your own life. And I'd love to hear if you want to share in the comments on Spotify or YouTube, or reach out and email of just what is your life speaking to you, or what are you noticing in your life? What patterns are coming up, and how are you working with those? And what are you finding helpful? Is there anything I'm missing here of like how life speaks to you, or how you respond to that, or how you create space to process what life is speaking to you? And I'd be curious to hear if you want to share. So Spotify comments, YouTube comments, or send me a message. And again, if you're on the email list, I'll just send this out to you. So I didn't talk about it so much in this episode, but I will send out this guide for what to work with in this full moon for your rising and moon signs. It's based on the houses that are affected by it. So again, for all of us, it's giving us an opportunity to do what I just did on the podcast, but we can do this anytime we're working with Shravana energy. Anytime we want to connect with the wisdom of Shravana, is listen to our lives, listen to the messages it's giving us through these ways that life speaks to us. And if you want a little more with this and some guidance and a little meditation you can do with this, that's all in your inbox now if you're already subscribed. And if you're not, go to quietmindastrology.com, sign up for the free weekly horoscopes, and sign up for the workshop, Become Your Own Astrologer. This is going to be amazing. I just spent the last entire week, so 4 straight days working all day, updating the workbook. I'm super happy with it, super excited to share it with you. I was just like taking some time to reflect on what I've created over the past several years and the results students have gotten, what has really helped them the most, how I can make this the most directly helpful for you. And even if you've taken it before, it's all new this year. It's going to be super powerful. I continue to grow myself, and I continue to check in, like, how is my life speaking to me, and how am I growing, and what am I learning, and what is astrology to me? And I process all that and integrate it into what I share. So I've had a lot of growth myself over the last several years, huge growth. And I'm excited to share a lot of the insights and clarity that I've gained and what I've observed in the students I've worked with. Amazing, amazing people around the world. And I know many of you are listening, so I appreciate you so much and thank you. And I'm excited to start the next cohort of the mentorship and the new moon this month in August. And that's going to be super fun. And the new moon in Leo, we're going to start the next class of the mentorship. You can check it out at quietmindastrology.com/workshop to join the free live workshop, Become Your Own Astrologer. Thank you for listening. Look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology podcast.